The pyramid, even though it's completely open on the sides, as you can see, there's no sides. There's just the tubing. There's no walls. There's no sides of any kind. But when you're sitting inside it, it feels solid and enclosed. Hello again, everyone. My name is Alexis Shepard, and welcome to a special edition, a special episode of Ponderings from the Pyramid, because today we're going to actually do a tour of my pyramid. I'll show you just a little bit of what it looks like from the chair. When we're done with the tour, I'll sit back down in the camera. We'll talk a little bit more about how it came to be. But the pyramid is a little over 7 feet tall, and the dimensions of the square at the bottom are 5 feet on each side. The pyramid is made out of copper tubing. It's 1/2-inch copper. It's filled with quartz crystals. You can see the black lights up on the ceiling as part of the ways that I use the black light tapestry that's not currently hanging behind me. The pink on the copper is black light tape to make those tubes show up. This is a bag of the quartz that is inside. They were just put in there in order to fill the copper tubing with quartz crystals and the energy. There are crystals in all of the corners and in the peak. I didn't go into planning which would go in which corner. In fact, it was quite the opposite. As I went to the rock and crystal shop, the crystals told me which ones wanted to be in the pyramid and which corner they wanted to be in. You can see that there are selenite bowls down there with some quartz crystals. Even though that one in that corner is a small quartz skull. Vanadinite down in the corner with a little round ball of Rosafia, and more quartz in the back. And then up at the top, I wanted a Merkaba, and goldstone is very, very pretty. It's very, very powerful for a man-made glass. Aqua Aura is the name of the blue. That's what's at each of the 4 corners at the top. And then hanging from the middle, this is Labrador here. And then that's a jade pendulum. And there's some malachite behind that. And then hanging down here inside that little silver ball is some moldavite. And then back down to the goldstone Merkaba. And so that's what the pyramid looks like. Oh, I forgot to show you the stuff that's under the chair. The things that are under the chair are all grounding stones or fossils. You can see there's some ammonite, there's some magnetite, and some jet, and some black onyx, and there's several different grounding stones. That's a ball of petrified wood. And so all of the grounding stones are down on the ground. So now that we've got the outside tour done, I want to tell you a little bit about how it came to be. I didn't have any particular plans to make a pyramid when I started on my spiritual journey. It literally just came to me in a download that said, you need to make yourself a place to go meditate. And at that point in time, I didn't yet have the drum, so that wasn't part of the equation yet. But I had somehow just stumbled across something about the healing power of pyramids. I started to do more research and found out that there's a lot of research about the healing power of pyramids. I was just inspired, just kind of out of the blue, to build this pyramid. So the shape of this pyramid is what's called a Nubian pyramid. It's taller and more pointy than the Giza pyramids, which are flatter and wider at the base. So this is a Nubian pyramid. This is actually the 3rd iteration of this pyramid. I started out building a traditional Gaza shape and took up too much space at the bottom, and it wasn't tall enough for me to sit in without my head being clear up at the point, and it didn't work very well. So I kept modifying it until I got to the iteration which you currently see, which is the Nubian pyramid. When I was building the pyramid, I didn't build it the way I normally engineer things. It was very interesting. Normally I spend a great deal of time researching things and reading the science behind them and engineering them to be whatever the science says. But this particular project was done from intuition, almost completely. I did a little bit of research, as I mentioned, online to get the different dimensions and the angles. There's a lot of science behind it, but mostly I just followed my intuition. People often ask me, what does the pyramid feel like? And it's a hard thing to describe, but essentially, the first feeling that I noticed when I sat in it is just a release of whatever's bothering me, whatever sort of anxiety I might be struggling with on any given day, or just the chaos of the world. And of course, the chaos is pretty dramatic right now. But even a few years ago, there was a lot of chaos. And the first thing I noticed when I sat in the pyramid is the calm, the relief, the sheltered feeling. As I was describing it to my wife, Deb, she said, when I was describing that, it just, everything gets peaceful when I sit in the pyramid. And she goes, shelter. It's a shelter from the chaotic energy of the outside. And that's absolutely a perfect description. Imagine, if you will, you're someplace on a cold, windy, blustery day with either snow or drizzle or whatever outside, and it's just blowing and it's blowing and it's blowing, and you don't really realize how much you're fighting against the elements. As soon as you step into the foyer, you feel the comfort of the shelter. All of the chaos and the cold and all of the things that have been negatively affecting you, even though you may or may not have even been aware of it, it's suddenly just gone. And that's what it feels like to sit in the pyramid. As soon as you sit in the pyramid, whatever chaos, energetic chaos was going on is just gone. The other thing that seems to happen, if you remember when you were kids, if you ever had a big box, like a box that a washing machine came in, or a dryer, or something that was big enough for you to get in as a kid and play around and make it your fort, it feels very safe and secluded, just like that. It feels like it has walls, even though it doesn't. I swear, I can take my hand and I can feel the edges. I can feel the walls, the energetic barriers that are there. I can do that with my eyes closed, and I'll know exactly where it is, because there's an energy inside the pyramid that just isn't there when you're outside of the pyramid. There is something that shifts from the inside of the pyramid to the outside of the pyramid. So it feels enclosed. It actually starts to get warm. The more I sit in it, I get warmer and warmer, to the point where sometimes I have to take off my cover up or put on a cooler shirt or whatever, because it just feels so warm and fuzzy inside the pyramid. The other sensation that's quite noticeable especially when I close my eyes and I go into the meditative state, there's this thick, heavy, comforting feeling. If you've ever slept underneath a weighted blanket, it feels like a weighted blanket covering my entire body. It feels almost as if it would feel if I was being covered with warm honey. Just imagine pouring warm honey over your entire body, that warm, liquidy feeling that just warms up everything that it touches. And so it's a combination of feeling enclosed, feeling warm, feeling like I'm weighted with the weight of love and harmony and peace. And essentially, it just feels way more powerful than I ever dreamed that it could. And when I start to drum and chant, and I add that energy to it, or if I'm channeling and I'm just doing light language or singing, or even with or without the drum, the power of the pyramid just magnifies it exponentially. As I said, when I started building the pyramid, I just followed my intuition. And the same thing happened in selecting the crystals. I just went into the crystal shop and I walked around until the crystals spoke to me, which they so often do. So I ended up just putting the crystals that told me where they wanted to be. Then I researched them to see what is the energy of those crystals and what is the healing that any particular crystal might give. And what I found out was, not surprisingly enough, is that the crystals are exactly where they're supposed to be, doing exactly what they're energetically designed to do. But I didn't have to research that. I was just told, or by my intuition rather, which crystals to put in which corners in order for them to be the most powerful. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that when I get ready to get up and walk out of the room, walk out of the pyramid, it feels like there's no door. It feels like there's this invisible energetic barrier, which of course there is, but it feels sacred. It doesn't feel like it should be penetrated. It feels very distinct, and it feels like you shouldn't be able to walk through it. But of course you can. It's just a very bizarre feeling. So I spent quite a bit of time talking about how sacred the space feels and how enclosed it feels. So when I do end a session and I get up to leave the pyramid, I always give thanks, because it feels like such a sacred space. And of course it is. So I always give thanks, and then I say, Amen, so mote it be. And that's how I end the session. Love you all. Goodbye.